Hello and welcome to this episode of Access Granted. I'm here with Dr. Rebecca Graham and Paul this evening. We should be having a guest with us, I hope.
We'll see. She hasn't emailed back yet, so maybe she's just trying to get in. We'll find out. And if not, this will be a really short broadcast. I want to thank everybody for being here. Bex, we haven't had a chance to catch up since Budget Day. I'm really curious to see what your response was to what Nicola decided to deem as necessary for everyone.
I mean, it's a funny one. When I was talking around it with friends, I think the thing that came out for me, or that coalesced, was that this is a budget where they have put money towards pain points. And if you think about the parts of our society that have been quite noisy or at breaking point or have been very consistent about protesting, those are the parts of our society that have got a bit of money and have done okay in this budget. But there's no overarching cohesive approach to any of it. It's just, the disability sector's protesting a bit, we better make sure disability services has enough money. Parents are complaining in education about learning support, we better make sure there's a bit of money there. Neurodivergence and autism are getting pretty noisy, we better make sure they get something. But there's no joined upness to any of it. There's early intervention now apparently for autism or for children who have autism, but there's no clear pathway from that early intervention into learning support necessarily. There's more money for OARs and for speech language therapists, but there's no training pathway to make sure that we have enough speech language therapists, and there's no addressing the working conditions that cause people to leave in the first place. There's some money for health, but it's not joined up funding to address why some of those pain points exist. There's money for private after hours clinics, but there's not money for ongoing health needs. So it's a really strange budget that really is a taking from one area to give to a noisier area and not really thinking it through in any cohesive, coherent way. It's quite strange.
Out of curiosity, we had a discussion on Friday night with some of the viewers about the 12-month prescription change. And I admit, at the time, I hadn't done much looking into it, so I couldn't take a side either way. I've seen since the announcement that there are some people who have concerns around things like diabetes. So you need to adjust your medication for that every few months to make sure that it's staying up to speed. So 12 monthly could be problematic. In terms of the people that you work with and the organizations that you work with, is that something that could make a positive benefit?
It's not the thing that I hear people asking for.
Okay.
Like, it's clearly somebody's been asking for it because the government's decided, yep, we're going to do that. The people I work with, they'd rather have free prescriptions and be able to see their GP. So it's not a bad thing, but it's not really the things that we've been asking for will make a big difference. It seems a strange thing to put in there. So clearly it's a pain point somewhere for some group of people, and they've gone, yep, here you go. Here's a treat to, adjust things or make things easier for you. So it's, peculiar.
Mm.
We're still in our own pool.
Oh, no, Rebecca's here. But definitely not on our own. Definitely not. But still haven't had any word come through from Tracey directly.
That's
right.
Awful.
These things happen. These things are absolutely happen.
What's the bit that she left messages on Facebook that I can't get into?
Yeah, we need to have a little talk about how you're reaching out to people if you're doing it all through Facebook.
Not all of it.
Yeah. But no, I've emailed Tracey in the past to set up the appointment and put in the studio links and things like that, and she accepted it. So I don't know what's going on. Maybe she's just out there in the storm at the moment, hiding away from everybody, trying to stay safe.
No, all joking aside, talked to a lot of politicians on social media. So hopefully she hasn't messaged me to say that she couldn't make it or something.
Well, if that's the case, then that's the case. Either way, we roll with it. That's certainly no worries. Well, then, while I have you both here and we are waiting, we are now 18 months away, thereabouts, from the next election. Hopefully less. Hopefully. Next week, the Deputy Prime Ministers change hats, and we get David in as Deputy, and Winston gets to be the only minister taking a pay cut out of the coalition. What would you like to see between now and before the campaign starts in terms of policies around disabilities from any of the political parties that are out there?
About disability, I really, really like the green tech calculator. Now, I did it the other week before our alternative budget special that we did with the Green Party. And under the tax calculator, I would earn $615 alone on disability allowance a week.
Okay.
Now, that's some pretty impressive numbers. And there is a disclaimer at the bottom. There is a disclaimer at the bottom that this does not take into account your living support payment or anything. So imagine what that could be on top of that.
Yeah, wow. That would be a game changer, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
It really would.
Wow.
So I did the math on this, to be honest, and some disabled people could actually be taking home or taking away, however you want to word it, up to $1,000 a week if you put in all the different packages. And this current coalition wouldn't have a bar of that. So imagine what that's like.
Yeah. How much is that a year? $52,000 a year?
Roundabout.
Because I know there are people who are on packages of $150,000 to $300,000 a year, but that includes paying for carers. So that includes 24/7 care and paying for a carer 24/7.
No, the stat that I'm referring to is just benefit alone.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
How about you, Bex? What would you like to see in the next sort of round of policy statements?
Oh, I mean, there's what I'd like to see, and then there's reality. I feel like the two of those are very far apart right now.
Let's go dream world. Absolute dream. What would be like the best pinnacle of reactions and responses and outcomes for you?
I mean, I would love to see people paid a living wage across the board, and that's been taken away by this government. And I would love to see the pay equity reinstated, because that's huge too. And by that I mean we're talking about predominantly women who work in these very lower wage jobs, predominantly Māori and Pacifica women too. And if people were paid, if our living wage was our minimum wage, that would be a massive game changer. And if women had pay equity, that would also shift the dial quite a bit. I would really like to see, in an ideal dreamland world, I'd love to see serious consideration given to a UBI, a universal basic
income.
Thank you. It's the end of the day, and I couldn't remember what the rest of it stood for.
For people just joining us, we don't know where Tracey's got to.
It's all right. I'm chasing it up. I sent her an email. Everybody answers their email at this time of night.
A UBI has been trialled in pockets overseas. It's had lots of trials, something like 35 plus trials in different countries and different population groups. And every time it's been trialled, it's actually been a roaring success, because people continue to work. People tend to stay in their jobs, but what they tend to do is get involved in other things. So it's almost like people just sort of settle down a little bit, and they get involved in the community, and they do volunteer work, and they stop with all that sort of side hustling and actually start really connecting with their communities and doing some really interesting things, particularly for people who may not be as well off. And I don't think New Zealand's trialled it. I'm not aware of New Zealand having trialled it anywhere, and I'd really like to see it giving serious consideration of how could we do that? Is it feasible? What would that look like? What would the cost be?
Is the pension considered a UBI?
I think it is.
They just announced that super is going to be mean tested in some fashion. So I don't know how that's going to turn out. Yes.
I might need to do some digging on that. My understanding was that contributions to your KiwiSaver was looking to be means tested at some stage, but I don't think that they would do something like that to the... It would be a shot in the foot for any right-wing government to turn around and say to senior citizens, we're going to means test and not just give you the money that we've been telling you that you are entitled to.
I don't think they're going to. I think they're just talking about what do we do, because it's going to be a big cost.
Like from the comment I heard from Nicola Willis, who was filling in for Christopher Luxon this morning on breakfast because he was apparently under the weather. She said something to the effect of, she admitted that they are looking at campaigning to raise the retirement age, and then she made some throwaway comment about something to do with the superannuation becoming means tested or something.
The means testing KiwiSaver contributions. So for younger people, they're now means testing the KiwiSaver contribution. So they're means testing. The government's now means testing how much it contributes into your KiwiSaver each year.
Yeah, I know that they're campaigning in 26 on raising the retirement age, but I've just found a piece on TVNZ. Let's see if I can bring it up here. That says very specifically. Let's go share screen. That one there. That benefits KiwiSaver events are mean to be means tested, so why aren't pensions? So it looks like pension mean testing isn't on here. And it says pretty much it's just simply not politically feasible for the government to do so. it would just be a very, very bad idea for any government to say we're going to start means testing.
Yeah, thank you for the correcting me in the chat. It was Seymour that brought it up. So
just ignore everything Seymour says. Try to. But since there are people in the chat, it's probably a really good time to remind everyone as well that submissions have opened today for the Regulatory Standards Bill. If people would like to submit to that, there is a portal on the Parliament website. It's really important people have their say. When the website's up and running, it's been a bit glitchy tonight. Apparently, lots of people want to have their say. And you don't even have to say a lot. You just have to say something. And you have to use your own words. Don't use like a copy-paste form. Otherwise, you end up like all those poor, sad racists from Hobson Pledge who are complaining that their submissions didn't get counted on the Treaty Principles Bill. It could just be a sentence that says, I oppose this bill. So you can do that anytime for the next 4 weeks.
Now the question is, will this break the record of the Treaty Principles Bill submissions?
I don't think it will. I think the big difference is Treaty Principles Bill it's got the problem in the title. It's treaty principles. That's a big thing. Regulatory standards just sounds like a really dry, absolutely boring bill that everybody has said is really, really bad except David Seymour and Chris Luxon.
Yeah. Well, at least this is turning into a post-budget speech instead. Program, rather.
Yeah, I can fake my way through most conversations. It's absolutely fine. Absolutely fine. Here's a comment that's come through actually that you guys might want to comment on. This one here is from Not Bernadette. One thing I disliked about the Greens budget was them not including bringing back Whaikaha proper and EGL. I find ACC just as hard to deal with as MSD. Need something that's disability-led.
Yeah. Yeah. As long as it's done correctly and there are some disabled people involvement, I don't actually. My opinion changed on this, even though I originally did that petition to get it returned. I'm now more about the disability supports getting a fair return now that I've had time to reflect on it. For me, now that I've had time to reflect on it, I don't necessarily mind which organisation is running it, as long as we get the supports we deserve. So for me, it now doesn't matter upon reflection if it is ACC, if it is Waikaha, if it is MSD, if it is the DSS support services. It doesn't to me now. It doesn't really matter. As long as we get the supports we deserve. I don't know how Bex feels on that one, but my opinion sort of changed.
I really am a big fan of EGL, or Enabling Good Lives principles, being actioned in practice. I think the current NASC system could easily switch to being far more EGL oriented and EGL led. My main issue with the NASCs and the needs assessment process is how medicalised it is. So the tools haven't been updated in years, and they're heavily medicalised, and your natural and community supports are almost weaponised against you. So if you have natural and community supports, you get less of a budget. And I'd love that to become actually far more about, here are the Enabling Good Lives principles, how can we enact them in your life? It doesn't bother me whether disability support services is with MSD or with Whaikaha. They're an arm and they're a means to an end. And I wasn't particularly impressed when they were in Whaikaha at the way in which they were managed by Whaikaha. I thought it was a bit of a dog's breakfast, to be quite honest. And some of that, there's a lot of reasons for that, but actually it's a very complicated and it's very messy and it needed sorting out.
Is it an opportunity then for whoever wins the next election? God willing, being an actual empathetic party of some sort, to go, okay, so it obviously didn't work under National, and there were obviously flaws under Labor. How do we redesign this to get it right this time? You know, third time's the charm.
There's a couple of things in there that are complicated. One of them is around residential services. So we've got some leftovers from the old system, which are expensive, and we want to avoid making those mistakes again. And that's going to be an issue no matter who's in Parliament. So you have what's called the high and complex framework, which is essentially, to be blunt, what do we do with people who have an intellectual or cognitive disability and are violent and are criminal and hurt people? And it's a very dirty little secret and nobody likes to talk about it. And so that is expensive because you need to do it in a way that upholds their rights and in a way that supports the disabled person, but also in a way that keeps other people safe. And it is not done well at all currently. It's very, very badly done. And this government has given some more money to it. So that's positive. Then you've got residential care services for people who are high and complex needs, but who aren't harmful to others. Also very expensive. And then you have people coming through now who are a range of mild, moderate, severe, high and complex needs. And the problem is if you don't resource families and communities into an enabling and build capacity in terms of thinking what is possible for a life, you will end up funneling people into residential care and into segregated services and into prisons. So it's that short-term and long-term, but if we don't address the families and what we need now, you're going to end up with a problem down the road, just like we've got a problem now because it wasn't addressed 20 years ago. So that's very complicated, and it didn't answer your question, but essentially we have to start talking about this stuff really seriously and not just brushing it under. It's too expensive or it's too hard or we don't want to talk about it.
Then changing tack ever so slightly, we have a local body election coming up this year, October the 11th. There is always going to be people out there who scream that councils should focus on water and roads and nothing else. The Prime Minister called them need to haves, not nice to haves. The things that council do are vast. It's public transport, it's access to roadways, walkways, public spaces, all of that kind of thing. What do you think people looking at running at this year's local body election need to understand about what council does for those with disabilities in our community, and what could they do better? What could councils do better to help those communities?
Transport access is a big one for me. Because, you know, as you know, we went to Wellington Regional very recently, me and Nick. And by the way, if people are wondering where Nick is, he's at a campaign function.
Busy man.
But in regard to that, the lack of follow through from our council is disappointing because, and I think this is the first time I'm revealing it on air, and I'm allowed to because it was public video. After me and Nick went and made that submission, I had the pleasure of watching the decision briefing the next day, and that was streamed live on YouTube. I think it'll be on their on-demand section in their YouTube. They keep it up, and the thing that really blew me away that I keep going back to that I've mentioned in some of our private chats a few times off camera, that they keep using the excuse of some transport, especially boat transport, not being able to be made accessible, and they are not legally obliged to make it accessible due to maritime law. And I've been speaking to a few council contacts before I got locked out of social media that said that it's absolutely appalling. They can't believe they get away with that in this day and age, that they can use maritime law not to make a boat accessible, for example. For example, I'm helping fight to get the Eastbourne Ferry here in Wellington, Upper Hutt Valley, Wellington, accessible, and they don't have to do it due to maritime law. I find that abhorrently disgusting that they don't have to do that. I just wanted to get either of your opinion on that. I find that horrendous.
I think maritime law should only be abused if you're setting up a pirate radio station out in international waters.
Like Hodaki.
Exactly like Hodaki.
But no, it's horrendous.
It is.
That, I mean, okay, it was allegedly a right-wing councillor who said it, but the fact that they can get away with that is disgusting. Yeah.
The fact that they're looking for loopholes is problematic as well.
Yeah. So are we going to continue our budget chat, or is Tracey going to...
Well, I'm still waiting for an answer from Bex about councils.
Oh, sorry. I got distracted thinking about maritime law. I mean, I think Blake's onto a winner here. Like, footpaths are literally core council business. Being able to get on a bus and go somewhere is core council business. Being able to leave your home and go along a footpath and catch a bus, I mean, that is very basic council stuff. And yet, as anybody who has any kind of mobility challenge can tell you, a lot of our footpaths are in poor disrepair, or they're narrow, or they don't have the curb cut, so they're very hard to get on and off the footpath. And of course, buses don't necessarily take the heavier electric wheelchairs, and you may not be able to get sufficient taxis, and total mobility can be just an absolute nightmare to deal with. So yeah, I mean, I'd love for transportation for all forms of disability to be a lot more seamless, and a lot more care given to the fact that there are people in our society who do actually appreciate a signalised crossing to be able to cross the road, and don't really want to play dodgeball with cars darting in and out of traffic just to get to the other side. It's a hot topic in the Facebook groups. There's some really pro-car.
In your neck of the woods, they've just authorised, I think it's about $1 million or just over $1 million for 2 lighted crossings in Hamilton East. One is outside Peach Grove Intermediate, I think, and the other is Grey Street down by KFC.
There's one going in on River Road opposite Dio.
Oh, that makes sense. I know that area really well around Dio. I used to live just a couple of 100 meters away from it. That's a twisty, turny, blind corner. So I can certainly see. Yeah, it's impossible to cross. Same with the one on Boundary Road. It's fairly close to a tight corner there. Grey Street, not so much, but it's a really high thoroughfare. And the arguments have been, why do we have to spend this much money on 2 pedestrian crossings? And then I was down at my shops the other day, and we have a pedestrian crossing that's raised and flush with the path. The path has been widened, and it's checked regularly so that people who need wheelchair access can access it. It's beautifully smooth transition for people who need wheeled access to cross the road. It works absolutely brilliantly. I personally can't see a problem with trying to make sure everybody has access, but people throw in money as an argument for why you shouldn't do something like this. I'm kind of curious what both of your perspectives are on the cost of dollars versus the cost to society.
Well, I've got a question for you first. Do you, without being biased, do you think that Auckland is country leading when it comes to their accessibility?
No, it's not. I know from experience working in events here with Auckland Council that we don't, when it comes to some things, we don't think well enough ahead in terms of accessibility. So I know, for example, that we did a series of concerts over summer. I think there's something like 20 odd concerts that we did around the city in different areas, all held in parks. And we made sure that there was extra disabled parking for people if they needed, that the paths were extra wide, that there was access for wheelchairs. But then we have the concerts on the grass. And that suddenly becomes an issue for some people for their mobility, because wheelchairs don't work as well on grass as they do on a hard surface like concrete or stone. We would have an occasional concert on the side of a hill. That makes it even harder for people with wheelchair access to be able to access it. And that wasn't from, I think that was because it was an event that was designed by somebody who wants to do well. His partner works in health and medicine. She thinks very carefully about these things as well. But having not lived that experience, sometimes you just don't realize it. So I always think that there is room for improvement. And I know the feedback that we got during this event series was really valuable in being able to go, right, this is what we can do better next time. And we were getting it halfway through the event going, right, for our last events, this is what we need to change. And I think councils need to be able to adapt. And for an event like that, it's agile enough to be able to. But overall, everywhere could be better.
Yeah. What about you, Rebecca? What are you thinking?
I mean, there's in our local Facebook groups, there's a little core of very bad faith actors, and they like to bash the council. They like to bash footpaths, and they like to bash anything the council does that might be perceived as green. You've sort of got the conspiracy theorists who go on about UN 2030 and all of that thing.
15-minute cities.
Yes. This core group really seemed to be very anti-cycle, very anti-pedestrian, very anti anything that shifts the status quo even a little bit. And they're a minority, but they're very loud and they're very well organised. And it's deeply, deeply frustrating, because we are spending money anyway on footpaths. We're spending money anyway on roads. They never bash the council for how much the council spends on roads. The council spends, we're spending $1 million on some signalised crossings so that pedestrians and cyclists can use the space more safely. The council spends billions of dollars on roads, and I don't ever see that core group of people complaining about how much money is being spent on roads. And yet, if they were serious about actually we want to reduce funding, we want to reduce the spend, you'd go after roads, because roads are far more expensive than any pedestrian crossings or cycleways or any of that stuff. It's chump change in comparison.
Yeah. I'm going to show you guys something then, because this sort of relates to that a little bit. This list that I'm bringing up here on screen, which hopefully that one there. Right. Right. This is a list of concerned local government representatives. They include the worst of the worst in the entire country. You've got Craig Jepson. He's the Kaipara Mayor. The gentleman who was like, no, we don't need to have Maori wards. By the way, Wellington Siege, awesome fun. Jaspreet Boparai is a presenter for Voices for Freedom. Andy Witches is Voices for Freedom. In fact, these people are all members of Voices for Freedom. They run a group called Concerned, I think it's Council Watch or something ridiculous like that. Yeah, Council Watch New Zealand. These are all people who are members of it. These are all people who are currently in elected positions around the country. They're the group that's pushing for the stuff that you're seeing around not wanting to do changes, not wanting to update anything online or out in the real world, because it all costs money and everything is absolutely terrible. It is a coordinated effort to make sure that councils don't work for the people. And these are the elected representatives that currently exist that are doing that. There is, however, a notable name missing on there. And Bex, you might be able to tell me who that is.
Well, wouldn't happen to be Andrew Bitter by any chance?
Andrew Bitter is not on this list. So there are others involved as well around the place.
That smacks of a hidden agenda. That fascinates me, because these are the folk going, oh, there's a hidden agenda, and going on about it. And yet you seem to have uncovered here a very hidden, very clear agenda to take over our councils and to drive their very specific, very narrow take on the things that they want and impose it on all the rest of us, which is entirely anti-democratic.
Well, that's where this one gets really interesting, because this is a list of local body elected officials who wrote to the Prime Minister, Winston Peters, and at the time Health Minister, telling us that we should not be involved in any planning for future pandemics that has any interaction with the outside world.
And including a certain Auckland City Councillor.
Yes, Ken Turner is on here. He's an Auckland City Councillor who for the Waitakere ward. He's the councillor who's been behind the whole co-governance for the Waitakere Rangers over my dead body. He is on this list as well.
So anti-Māori.
Yeah.
Anti-anything climate related.
Yep.
Absolutely. The one I was going to say, the one I actually find really fascinating is this lot here.
It is the only area in the whole country where Voices for Freedom have actually taken over one of their local community boards. It's down in Winton. It is, they've pissed off the police, they've pissed off the local community group, they've pissed off everybody. They pushed the chair out. They forced another person to quit over mental health issues. The councillor representative on the board quit because they couldn't work with them. This is why it's so important people get out there and vote for this year's local body elections.
2 questions then. Do you think, number one, that's why the entire Henderson Massey board, who happen to be Labour connected, announced in unison in a joint statement a few months ago that they were running together? And did you know, this is more of a comment actually, did you know that Craig is a huge mega fan?
Of what?
Donald Trump, mega.
Oh yes, he described himself as the Donald Trump of Northland. He is a horrible piece of work. He's been platformed by the New Zealand Centre for Political Research, which is another group of terrible people. So yeah, people might want to take note of this, but these will of course be coming out in individual videos closer to the election as well on my channel.
It's really hard because you don't get the same funding and you don't get the same scrutiny for local council elections. It's just not there.
No.
And unless someone like you is doing this work, you don't know.
Yeah.
And would you like to give us a little message about your upcoming content for your doco and stuff?
So while I'm in another part of the world completely and I can run away and hide from everyone, I'm putting out a series of content pieces on my YouTube page, and it'll go out onto Facebook and stuff like that as well, around the local election, specifically about how you get involved, what councils do, all those kind of things that people ask questions about. And then once nominations are finished and finalized on August 1st, we're going to go through region by region and have a look at all of the screeds of information and data that I've got researchers around the country that have been working on, and point out to you which candidates are really bad because they're hiding who they say they are. They're working with groups like Voices for Freedom, or they're tied in. There is actually one overarching political group that has a lot of sway on all of this that people don't realize. You'll never guess what it is. You'll never guess which political group actually has more sway on local elections this year than anybody else.
Destiny Church?
Nope. I wonder if anyone in the chat can tell me. I'm very curious to see if anyone in the chat can guess which group.
I just remembered. ACT have a whole bunch of candidates.
No, you see, this is interesting. The ACT thing is actually really important because they're trying to differentiate themselves from this other group. It is a very deliberate thing to go, look, this is who we are. And I think it's great for voters because you can look at a candidate and go, well, no, I'm never going to vote for them because they're with ACT. You know what they stand for. You know they're probably going to be terrible people, but you know what they stand for.
But, like, we have to remember that some politicians aren't as bad as they seem on TV. For example,
some are worse.
As I've said many times on the different platforms before, I get along very well when I go to Parliament with Todd Stevenson. Yes, we may not agree politically, but every time we bump into each other at catering or whatever. He's lovely to talk to.
So Todd is not part of this group. It's actually New Zealand First. New Zealand First chief funder, their chief political advisor. He's the person who is involved in organising all of these groups around the country, all these individual little things. In fact, he also, the guy's name is Glenn Inwood. He was the man behind the Inflection Point anti-trans event at Tākina. He's been behind Voices for Freedom and making sure they've got funding and their candidates got elected last time. He shares a server with a Wellington mayoral candidate. Like, there's so many fingers and so many pies here.
He'd be connected with Family First then too, and those sorts of. Well, that's very untrustworthy and dishonest of them not to be upfront about who they are. That's the part I find hard.
Isn't he the guy that runs that Wellington Live or whatever?
So Wellington Live is Graham Bloxham, who also has connections back to Glenn Inwood.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's why we'll be going region by region in the content after nominations come in to go, right, these are the connections that this person has. People have a right to choose who they want to vote for, and they can choose to vote for those people. But voters, I think, also have a right to know who it is that they're actually voting for.
And he's behind it. He bitched moaned recently because he got arrested.
Yeah, I saw that, for trying to walk into an active crime scene.
He got mad because he didn't want to couldn't film an active crime scene.
Oh, that's funny. My battery's dying rapidly. I don't know where my charger's gone. Some child of mine will have borrowed it. So if I drop off, I apologise in advance.
Well, I was going to say it might be time to put in our apologies and leave. It doesn't look like Tracey is going to be able to make it. She hasn't responded to the messages. I hope she's safe. Absolutely hope she's safe. And so I'll let you have the final word, Blank.
We'll try. Apologies. We'll try and reschedule this. And thanks for the budget conversation instead. Have a good one, everybody. Take care.
Thanks, everybody.
Ka kite.